to another video here with the New York Jets team breakdown, so let's get right into it. Last season, the Jets, obviously a very hyped up team, very strong team on both sides of the ball, bringing in Aaron Rodgers, so there was a lot of hype and expectations for this team, and then obviously Aaron Rodgers ends up going down on, I believe, the second play of the game, week 1 against the Bills, and missed the entire season, so obviously the Jets ended up only 7-10, which was 3rd in the AFC East, 13th in the AFC, and obviously missing the playoffs. So disappointing season, but getting Rodgers back from injury this year, I would say expectations have been raised again for the Jets. Looking at how the team has changed, starting with the losses, there's a lot, but not a lot of, I would say, huge pieces that they lost. Starting on the defensive side of the ball, on the defensive line, losing Bryce Huff on the edge is probably the biggest loss, also losing Carl Lawson and Al Woods on the defensive line, and then also losing Jordan Whitehead at safety. And then on the offensive side of the ball, losing a few offensive linemen in Mekhi Becton, Laken Tomlinson, Dwayne Brown, and Billy Turner. Again, it's a lot of players, but a lot of depth pieces. Mekhi Becton didn't really play, dealt with a lot of injury. But the offensive line definitely losing a lot of pieces there, so lacking depth and starters after these losses. But looking at other losses, like CJ Uzomah and Randall Cobb, just Zach Wilson also, just not huge losses for the team. So overall, I would say the team didn't get too much worse. They just lost a lot, but nothing super important. Just needed to address offensive line and then defensive depth. Looking at their additions, I think they had a spectacular offseason. Looking at it, starting with the offensive line, which is, I think, where they needed the most help, bringing in Morgan Moses, John Simpson, and Tyron Smith. That's 2 potential starting tackles and depth at guard. John Simpson could also start. Probably will end up starting. And then also bring in Mike Williams at wide receiver. He'll probably play wide receiver 2 behind Garrett Wilson. We'll see how his health is next season. And also they brought in another receiver through the draft in Malachi Corley, who I'll mention again in a bit. He could also end up playing a significant role in that offense. So upgrading the receiver position, also bringing in Javon Kinlaw and Lee Kaifotu on the defensive line, and then Hassan Reddick off the edge. I think it's important to note that right now Hassan Reddick is kind of not been participating in training camp. He's not been with the team, not really sure what's going on. He's not happy there, wants a new contract. I do assume that he will end up playing for the Jets next season, though. And then, yeah, the other additions, Tyrod Taylor and Tariq Cohen, are just depth pieces. I don't expect them to play a huge role. But overall, I do love these additions for the Jets, specifically the offensive line. Looking at the draft class, also really like this. In the first round, also just doubling down on the offensive line with Olu Fashanu at 11. Could play tackle. I think he'll probably play guard with Tyron Smith and Morgan Moses playing tackles. Olu Fashanu can play one of the guard spots. And I think that really just gives you a pretty complete offensive line for the Jets, and a pretty strong one at that as well, assuming everyone stays healthy and Olu Fashanu does play up to where his expectations are as the number 11 pick in the draft. Malachi Corley, who I mentioned earlier, adding to that receiver room. Definitely a very strong room now. Garrett Wilson, Mike Williams, Malachi Corley, a very good 3. And then down the board, just depth pieces on offense, Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis, 2 running backs. Is, I don't know, kind of questionable why you would draft 2 running backs. You do have Breece Hall as probably, I would say, easily a top 5 running back in the NFL right now. Yes, you want depth, and Breece Hall has had some injury issues. I don't know if I would draft 2, but it's a pretty strong RB room now. Also bringing in Tariq Cohen. I don't know how much of a factor he'll be, if he'll even make the team. But it's a very strong RB room. Jordan Travis will just be a backup quarterback. Obviously, you do not have Zach Wilson anymore, but brought in Tyrod Taylor, although with Aaron Rodgers' health being kind of questionable, especially after what happened last year, I understand wanting to bring in another quarterback, so Jordan Travis as well. And then 2 depth defensive backs down the board. Looking at the Jets' opponents for next season, the schedule's not terrible, but not the easiest. Playing in the AFC East is obviously tough. The Dolphins and Bills going to be competitive. Patriots, we'll have to see. My expectations is not so much this upcoming season. Playing the AFC South and NFC West, so teams like the Texans and the 49ers in there will pose tough challenges for the Jets next season. Other teams in there, such as the Colts, Rams, Jaguars, could be competitive, probably easier, and then the other games I think are probably pretty winnable for the Jets. And then also playing the Broncos, Steelers, and Vikings, all three of which I think maybe those teams could compete, but I think the Jets are just better than all three of those teams pretty easily. So the schedule is not that bad. Looking at a ceiling here, just right away, I can see that it's 14-3. I honestly, even when I made this, I was like, wow, that's a lot higher of a ceiling than I expected to give the Jets. But honestly, looking at, the schedule, which is actually not too bad, but looking at the roster, it is maybe one of the best, if not the best, rosters in the NFL. The defense is spectacular. The secondary is really good. The front seven is amazing. Receiving core got boosted. The running back room is really good. The offensive line took a massive step up. And obviously, it's mostly going to come down to Aaron Rodgers. And my kind of stance on that is Aaron Rodgers at his ceiling could be at an MVP level. Aaron Rodgers at his floor is probably just a mediocre quarterback, or maybe he's not playing if he gets injured again, and then you have like a Tyrod Taylor filling in, or Jordan Travis, the rookie. But with that being said, I think that the roster around whoever's playing quarterback is fine, where even if it's a situation where Rodgers is not the Aaron Rodgers that he was in Green Bay, which is, I think, where I expect him to be, is just not as elite as he was. I think that the team can still be very strong. He can be an average quarterback, and this team could still hit a 14-3 record. So actually looking at the games here, I only have them losing to the Dolphins and Bills away, and then also the 49ers. And then, on the other side of things, I have their floor at 10-7. And honestly, I think that this is a team that could still have a winning record even if Rodgers were to be injured, but I don't really take injuries into account when doing floor scenarios. But looking at this floor, I have them splitting all their division opponents, losing to the Texans and Colts at home and the 49ers and Jaguars away. This is a scenario where maybe Rodgers is just plays pretty poorly compared to what we're used to with Aaron Rodgers, just being older, having not played, and maybe the additions on the team don't really work out. But as I said before, I do expect the Jets to actually be a very good team next season. Doing this video actually made me realize that I was a lot higher on them than I thought I was. So as for my prediction, I had at 13-4. I think the Jets are definitely a contender for the strongest roster in the NFL. And if Aaron Rodgers can play up to where his ceiling is, this is looking like a pretty unstoppable team. In this scenario, I have them splitting all their divisional games, as I usually do with my predictions, just because divisional games usually go either way. And then the only other loss I have coming away to the 49ers. But that's everything I really have to say about the Jets next season. I realize I'm probably higher on them than most people are. Even if you had asked me a week ago, I'm probably higher on the Jets now than I was then. But really just looking at the roster, I think that they will be a very good team. But yeah, thank you for watching. If you have any additional thoughts, feel free to leave them in the comments. And feel free to subscribe to the channel if you like the content. Bye.